This event this evening and 3 others have been spawned by this encyclical by Pope Francis. It is an absolutely phenomenal document. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you read it and take it and read it slowly so that you can meditate on what he's really calling us to in a world which seems at times to be falling apart. Before I give the opening prayer, I just want to refer to 1 or 2 lines in the encyclical, which I think spell out what we hope to hear tonight in our discussion. I think this is going to be very exciting. I had never met Mayor Cole before, but just the initial encounter with him is really stimulating my curiosity about it. And also, Jackie, thank you for doing this tonight. Listen to what the Pope says. The development of a global community of fraternity based on the practice of social friendship. There's a concept to be broken open on the part of peoples and nations calls for a better kind of politics, one truly at the service of the common good. Sadly, politics today often takes forms that hinder progress toward a different world. For many people today, politics is a distasteful word, often due to the mistakes, corruption, and inefficiency of some politicians. There are also attempts to discredit politics, to replace it with economics, or to twist it into one ideology or another. Yet, can our world function without politics? Can there be an effective process of growth toward universal fraternity and social peace without a sound political life? Aristotle in Greece, thousands of years ago now, said that human beings are political animals. What did he mean by that? He meant that we had to live in the polis, from which we get the word political. We have to know how to relate in the public forum in order to create a common good and see the good of society. All of us, social animals, political animals, rational animals, and most of all, relational animals who have the capacity to work together to build a good society. So let's just say a little prayer before we begin tonight. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Good and gracious God, you have created us in your image and given us the tremendous capacity to transcend ourselves in love. Your vision is of a world united, of all peoples in their diversity, in their beauty, in the pluralism of their thought, in which we create one human community. Help us to be like the Good Shepherd, who going down the road sees the wounded, the marginalized, those who have no voice, and of his own resources reaches out to better that person's life by healing the wounds that are there and calling that person back into community. We ask you to send your blessing, particularly tonight, on Jacquie Baly and Mayor Cole, as they seek to dialogue about what it means to live good political life. Help us to open our minds so that we learn how we too can contribute to this political life and thereby seek the common good for all. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
I've known the mayor now going on 2 decades, and we were first introduced to each other when we were the youngsters on our respective city councils. And since they were neighboring cities, everyone said, "Oh, you have to meet Kevin. Kevin, you have to meet Jackie. Y'all remind me so much of each other." And we really had a very good, blessed relationship, not only in just friendship, but we've had an opportunity in the last 2 decades to really work well together. And if I were just reading your bio, I would talk about the fact that when Patty was talking about this series, and when we were talking about elected officials, Kevin was the first person that popped in my mind. And I'm going to tell you why later, because in part of the questions, thank you, Miss Patty. Things about Kevin is his wonderful family. His wife, Lisa, is one of my favorite people. And he's the only person I know that can look so good and have 10 grandchildren. 10.
Late breaking news. We have a new one coming in September.
I'm not surprised. Every single time I introduce Kevin, the number changes. So I'm not surprised at all. But thank you, Patty, for getting this, because I want to make sure that I give you your proper introduction before we go into our questions. Kevin Cole was sworn into mayor for the city of Pearland in November 17th, 2020. Prior to becoming mayor, Kevin he has a combined 9 years of prior service on city council. He served from 1995 to 1998, and then again from 2004 to 2010. Helping secure the 2007 bond program election, the Cowart's Creek diversion project, and strategic policy decisions that have spurred development of the Lower Kirby District. He and his wife, Lisa, they do have 4 children, which has helped them get 10 going on number 11. So can you please help me welcome my wonderful friend, Mayor Kevin Cole. Kevin, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the hospitality here at the university. This is my first time in this room, and I walked in and I said, this is a fabulous place to have this kind of a dialogue. And so I look forward to this tonight, and I just look forward to our discussion. We've had a tremendous friendship for many years, and it's only going to grow as a result of this.
And especially since we're both only 20.
That's it.
Yeah, we met each other in nursery school.
I just tell people I don't have any gray hair.
Well, thanks to Ms. Clairol, I don't either, but okay. So the reason why, when Patty and I were talking, Kevin, as I mentioned earlier, was one of the first people that I thought of, is because when he was running for office, every morning, Kevin would begin any kind of greeting with a scripture from the Bible on social media. You don't often see elected or public officials who are strong, even the ones I know who are strong in their faith. They often don't do that, not on social media. And I was so impressed with that. I knew he was going to win. This is when he was running for mayor. I knew it was going to happen. But I said, I really like the fact that Kevin is very, not only strong in his faith, but is letting people know this is the type of leader that I'm going to be. I'm going to be leading in my faith. And by the way, you're now a trendsetter, because I've seen many public officials now doing what you did and what you started in 2019. So my opening question for you is, as you started this, did you think you would get any backlash? What made you decide to do it? Because it's so comforting having the mayor of a city do that.
Actually, I started way beyond that and just continued on when I decided to run for office. Why? Because that's who I became. That's who I am. Backlash. I didn't think I would get backlash. More importantly, I'll just say this. I wasn't concerned if I was going to get backlash, because that's who I am. So I started, and anybody can pull out the Bible app and get a daily scripture reading and those types of things. And so It's not complicated, especially with today's world. You can open the scripture or you can go to an app and there it is. And so over the years, I go back and look, I'm a marker person. I lay down markers in my life. You can see that in scripture. There's markers along the way. And when I see something that happens in our family's life and I'm wondering, how did this happen? All I have to do is go back previous weeks and he's been telling me to get ready for it. It's been an amazing situation. So as I decided to run for office, it wasn't even a thought, do I continue or not? This is who I am. This is who I've become. I start this off every day. And the scripture that I put out there, it's for me. I'll tell people, it's for me. It's for me to be held accountable to. It's for me to aspire to. It's for me to live up to. And it's amazing the number of people who comment or come back and say, you have no idea what that scripture meant for me today. And
I'm one of them.
and if I were to stop it, I would probably have people wondering, you know, if I'm got a problem, you know, or what happened. And so it's really become who I am. And even tonight, talking about faith and politics and a better, you know, politics, I'm a Christ follower first, and I'm a husband second. And it just goes down. It's about priorities. And does that mean that we get it right every single moment of every single day? No, we still fail. We still have problems in our lives, and we still, you know, come off of our path a little bit. But that's the goal. Christ follower first. My wife is second to that, then our kids, then our grandkids. Somewhere down here is mayor. And I think if you keep the priority in line, everything will fall in place.
Well, I'm definitely one of them that I look forward to them every day. And there are often times that I feel you chose that for me. So thank you. We're going to talk about national issues later on, but I want to touch on it just a little bit right now. You see a lot of diversity in our country. Your city, I think, is running neck and neck with my city as one of the most diverse cities in the country. And there's a lot of harmony. A lot of the groups work very well together. You don't have a lot of the strife that you may see in some other cities throughout the country. Can you touch on exactly what the recipe for success is for your city, the region, and how you have been influential over that process?
I'll just say we're the most diverse in the greater Houston area. I tell Mayor Zimmerman that all the time. So we have a good running joke. But Pearland is a minority majority city. There is not a single group in town that is a majority. It's been that way for some years. I don't know exactly when it switched, but some years. And back when I was on council in the mid-90s and setting the tone for the city that we wanted to be, and then more recently in 2004 through 2010, we just wanted to build a good, clean, welcoming city. And that was welcoming to anybody and everybody. My background, I've been in Pearland almost 45 years now. And it's interesting. You have new and old, east and west, all of those kind of things that go on in our city. But I tell people, and I think it has to start with me as mayor, I don't care if you've lived in our city for 5 minutes or 50 years. If Pearland you call home, you're a Pearlander to me. And I'm here to represent you. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care the background that you lived, but I'm here to serve you. I want to listen to you. I tell people that the diversity of our city is actually an asset and a strength. We have people that have lived all over the country. We have people that have lived all over the world, and they have different experiences. I've lived in Pearland for 45 years, so my experience is limited. I've traveled, I've seen other places, but I haven't lived other places like that. So why not have that dialogue and ask people, what do you know? What do you see? Bring that experience to the table and let's grow our city in a better way. Obviously, we've got all of the rules, regulations, codes, development, all that stuff that we get bogged down in, but we want to make sure that we welcome anyone and everyone. One of our core principles, one of our strategic priorities is welcoming city. We want to be a welcoming to all city.
Well, I'm Caribbean, for those of you who may not know. I came to this country in '76, but you have a huge Caribbean population in Pearland. And all the Caribbeans I meet, they're like, I live in Pearland. I'm like, really? And I'm always calling Kevin. I'm like, what's up? Maybe I need to move to Pearland. So
on.
yes, you are a welcoming city. We definitely do know that and agree. Well, as you heard when I introduced Kevin, oh, I always call you Kevin. Should I call you Mayor Cole?
Call me Kevin.
Okay.
A lot of people say I lost my first name when I got elected, but I'd like to keep it. So,
Well, when I speak of you, I do say mayor. So I am respectful. But Kevin sort of comes out. But as I read Mayor Cole's introduction, you heard 2020. Yes, he actually ran his campaign and won when we were going through one of the most tumultuous, difficult, unpredictable times that we've ever seen, probably in our lifetime for a lot of people. Pearland did very well as far as navigating this pandemic where we just really didn't know. Can you share some secrets as to why people look at your city, how successfully the businesses still thrived and your residents and citizens still felt comforted during a very unpredictable time?
yeah, it was a very untrying time. We didn't really know what was going to happen the next day, right? But I will say this, Pearland, as we've grown larger and larger as a city, now the third largest city in the metro area, I've always told people the larger we grow, we have to grow large and small at the same time. So we have to keep that small town feel, small town atmosphere around. Well, what does that mean? To me, small town atmosphere means taking care of each other. If somebody's in need, we help them. So when the pandemic hit, you saw people doing everything they could to help their neighbor, to help small businesses. There would be small businesses that people would target and say, everybody needs to buy dinner from this restaurant tonight. And it would just be a shot in the arm to that restaurant. And so I tell people, we could grow to be 1 million people. We won't, but we could, as long as we focus on being small and taking care of needs. And I'll make this statement, and I think this was true in 2020. I've never seen a need go unmet in my community as long as the need is known. That's the key. So many people like to hold onto their issues and onto their problems. Let it be known. We have groups, people, others that are just waiting to help people. It's who they are. That is the Pearland way. We help people in need. So the pandemic didn't surprise me that everybody just band together and came together. You know, we had to go through the normal protocols of the business shut down for 2 months and all of that. And we worked our way back into it. But from how did we handle the pandemic in the city? We have a tremendous staff on our emergency services and operations that really did a great, phenomenal job being out in front and leading and getting people to do testing and all of those kind of things in the protocols. But it really was the community spirit that kept everybody together during that time.
Excellent. Well, what he won't tell you is that we were in touch with each other a lot during the pandemic, and I text him, how are you guys doing? It's like he was working nonstop. And a lot of people aren't aware, but Pearland is not a strong mayor city, meaning it's run by a city manager. But Kevin treats it as if it's a full-time position. And so he works just as hard at that position as he does with his job in development. And a lot of people underestimate the time it takes to run Anytime I moderate a forum, the first thing I do, and when I see your bride, the first thing I do is to thank the family, because tonight he's away from his family. Every night he's doing something on behalf of the city. And so I often say people they're not aware at the time it takes. Also, the smaller the city, I believe the harder it is. I believe you work, and I do like Mayor Turner, no offense to him, but I believe you work 4 times as hard as he does because of what you just said. People want to feel and have access to their elected officials. I remember when I used to go to the grocery store, it would take a normal person 20 minutes. It would take me an hour and 30 minutes because everybody's asking me a question. So I do want to tell you thank you for all of the time that you've put into this. And you've done it twice before becoming mayor. So in your life, when did you feel that you have the calling to be a public servant and to spend so much time in public service?
That's a good question. So sometime in about early 90s, I really felt a call to be a part of public life. Actually ran for school board in 1992 and lost, but I really felt the calling to be a part of and have a life of public service. And so then ran in 95, won, and I've been involved in the political arena now for almost 30 years. And so I do believe it's a calling. It's the reason why I can get up every day.
How can it be 30 years when you're not 30 years old? Remember?
Yeah.
We met at one in nursery school.
It's the whatever year of my 29th birthday. But so I think if you take it on as a calling, it's not difficult to get up and go and do the job each and every day. I feel it's something bigger than me. It's larger than me. It's not about me. It's about the job. It's about the community. It's about the people. I see myself as kind of a conduit to help people. You mentioned accessibility. I try to maintain accessibility each and every day. Back during the campaign, I would give my cell phone number out. Just, here's my number, call me. And I had people go, why are you doing that? That's crazy. And I go, I want them to call me. I want to be accessible. And I told people, I said, this phone number will not change after I'm elected. And it hasn't. I've had that same phone number now probably 20 years. And that's who I am. I put my email address out there for people. Email me. If you've got an issue, I can't solve your issue. Don't think I know it. You got to call and let me know. And if I know it, then I can go to work to help solve your issue, get staff involved. And it's amazing when that happens, how quickly things get resolved. And I just tell people, why fret over something? Let's just resolve the issue. So it's a calling. I think and as long as it's that, it's easy. I can work in my development business. I can work at the city, and I have my family life. Balancing it is the most difficult portion of what I do. In fact, I had somebody ask me during the campaign, what's the biggest challenge personally that you see facing going into this job? And I said, it's really time, making sure that I have the time to do the job the right way. And they said, well, how are you getting ready for it? And I said, well, I'm campaigning full time. And so setting the tone, setting the habits, setting my own schedule to where rolling right into it, I don't have to jump on board and do something different. It just moves right in. I go to the office pretty much every day. I'm not in the office all day, but I'll go by. But I am out and about, but I'm managing to keep it balanced. You mentioned my wife. We do a lot of events together. That way we are spending some time together. It's interesting. She's not a political person at all, but she makes a great first lady. And she's come out of her shell a little bit more about being involved in those types of things. But it gives us the opportunity to be together, even in evenings and those types of things. So we do spend more time together than we did when I was on council many years ago. We had small children. And so getting out and about at night was hard for her with kids at home and those types of things. Fortunately, that time has changed to where we kind of do it as a family.
Yeah, I want to toot her horn for a minute because when you were running, she told me what you just said. She's like, I'm just so nervous. I want to be the best representative for Kevin that I can be. And I said, you are. You're genuine. You're caring. You love the city. You love your husband. And it just really, really showed. So she is a wonderful First Lady. And I think the Pearland residents did a very good thing by electing you. I've heard a lot of great things, not only because I'm your friend, but because, it's true. So please give her a hug for me when you see her.
It was interesting. Shortly after the election, I had lunch with Mayor Zimmerman and actually had a fundraiser after the election. And Lisa was there, and I told people, I said, because my predecessor was in office for 30 some odd years. He's now 96 years old. And so we haven't had a first lady in town for many, many years. And so it's not like we can just look to this first lady as an example, right? And so she's searching around. She's going, who do I follow? Who do I look at? And I go, Nancy Zimmerman. And so Nancy.
But you want to know the funny thing is, Nancy told me almost the same thing that your wife did when Joe ran. So
yeah. So we have a great relationship between Joe and Nancy and myself and my wife. And so, but it's true. She was sitting here going, what do I do? And how do I do this? And I said, just be yourself.
Yes, because she's fabulous. If you can't tell, I just love his family. So I'm going to throw several major issues that we're facing as a nation currently. And I would like your opinion on, I'd like your opinion on how we are faring so far. As a leader who's strong in his faith, what your position would be, even though some of these may not impact Pearland at all. We can do that. Let's start with the Ukraine. What are your thoughts about what's going on there? It can be very simple. You don't have to go into depth at all.
Right. Initially, no one country should invade another, period. I mean, I think borders means things, and we should maintain that. If you've got political differences between you and another country, work it out diplomatically. One country shouldn't attack another. To me, it doesn't matter what side you're on, that you shouldn't attack your neighbor. Just like you shouldn't go next door and attack your neighbor next door. If you've got differences, you work it out. We as a country, I think we have to be careful getting in the middle of that fight. We need to sit back and make sure that if we align with something, that we're doing it the right way, that our ideals are being maintained. But I think at the end of the day, one neighbor shouldn't attack another. I hope and pray peaceful end to that. Just seeing the images, seeing people having to flee from their country, seeing the deaths that seem to be completely unnecessary is heartbreaking, just in and of itself. But as a country, we need to be very careful not to pick a winner and a loser in this, but pick freedom as our go-by, our ideals.
Okay, thank you. Immigration. There have been many polls that are out right now, and immigration is one of the top policies that are of concern for many voters and citizens, particularly the securing the border. So what are your thoughts about what is currently going on?
Yeah, I think we do need to secure our border. We don't need to be overrun by people coming in that are undocumented and just trying to overrun and come into our country. Having said that, how many years, and it's literally years, plural, have we talked about a broken immigration system? Well, let's stop talking about it and just fix it. Do what's necessary to fix it, but which goes back to, if we're waiting on people in DC to fix it, it'll never happen. So, somehow we have to fix this broken system. It shouldn't take years upon years upon years for somebody to be able to legally immigrate into this country and become a citizen and those types of things. And it surely shouldn't take tens of thousands of dollars to make it happen. So we've got to fix this system where people can come here the right way. But at the same time, we should not be able to tolerate just overrunning our borders. We need to be able to maintain our borders, maintain peace, and maintain and know who's coming into our country.
As someone who came here legally, I will tell you it takes years and years and years. It really is broken. I concur with everything you've just said. Oh my goodness, this one is, I have 2 young men in college and I have to give them allowance, and this gas price, oh my goodness. Thank goodness only one has a car away. But what about highest inflation rate in decades? And we're at a 4-decade high. Anytime you fill up your car, it's a little scary to look at the number. I mean, what do you think is going on with all of our thoughts on
Well,
the economy?
I think, well, all of the thoughts on the economy or inflation or gas price? All the above. Okay. Inflation. I'll address inflation. I took Economics 101 when I graduated. I graduated from Texas Tech University, and I wasn't an economics major. I was a business major. I was a marketing major. So I took a couple of economics classes. The only thing I remember from economics Basic 101, when you add to the money supply, print money, what's the result? Inflation. How many years have we been printing money? QE1, QE2, and adding to the money supply. So we should not be shocked that we have inflationary times. Forget gas prices, forget pandemic, forget all that. We shouldn't be shocked that we have inflationary pressure, because when you print the money supply, the law of economy is you're going to have a result of inflation. You add on top of that the whole pandemic, now all of a sudden people are at home, and the supply chain, because everybody got on their computer and decided to buy, and on all of those kind of pressures. So what happens with prices and inflation with supply and demand? There's a big demand and supply can't keep up, prices will go up. So all of this is working at the same time. Then you have gas prices. We need to make sure that we are energy independent. That means all forms of energy, not just oil, not just natural gas, but wind, solar, all of them need to be present in our community and in our nation. And I think the stronger we will be as a country if we're just energy independent. We shouldn't be buying, from other countries. We can do it here. We can argue the right or the left or the right or the wrong on pipelines and those types of things. But we've had pipelines in this country for hundreds of years, not hundreds, but 100 years. And they're safe. They're, reasonable to transmit, energy across our country. And so, why not keep and do our energy with ourselves? So much of this is geopolitical, in my estimation. I do think the Ukraine and the Russian war, all that has certainly added to it. But gas prices were raising before any of that ever started. But it was raising because of some of the other pressures that we were already seeing. Supply and demand mainly being the most. Lots of demand, less supply. We're having to buy it from other parts of the world. Prices are going to go up.
That's very true. Healthcare. A lot of people have been concerned about healthcare even before the pandemic. And then it was sort of brushed aside, and now it's coming to the forefront again. Any thoughts on our current state of affair in healthcare?
Yeah, it's healthcare and how we pay for healthcare really is the answer. We have the best healthcare, I think, in the world. Period. As a country and our systems, I think we have the best doctors and nurses and people and research and all of that. It's just we've got to figure out how to pay for it. And when you have the best, you're going to pay for it. It's going to be expensive. And here in the greater Houston area, we have the world's largest medical center in our backyard. It's no surprise that our healthcare cost is going to be higher than a lot of other places in the United States because we have the best doctors and nurses and systems that are out there. Now, we've got to figure out how to do that and do that equitably. I wish there was more transparency in the cost so people can really see what they're paying for. I also would like to see the consumer somewhat in charge of how they're purchasing and buying, whether it's going to a doctor or having a surgery or those types of things. Because it is a runaway expense. Health insurance in our country is non-attainable for an individual. I'll just say that. Certainly people below a certain means. So we've got to have an equitable solution that takes care of people who can't simply, but we've got to have and figure out a solution to lower those costs. Now, how do you do it? With maintaining the best system that you can. That's a complex situation. I'll say this. I used to be in the insurance business for years. And I used to tell people at like Pearland ISD and others with 2,000 employees, I said, I can lower your premiums and fix the cost of your premiums tomorrow, but you would hate me. And they said, how did you do that? How would you do that? No, I'd contract with about 3 or 4 doctors. That would be staff. That's who you go see. Contract with this hospital. And that's it. And I'll take the cost of healthcare from here to here. But you'd hate me because your doctor wouldn't be in the network. We would limit. So as you expand all of these networks and all of these doctors and all the hospitals, costs are naturally going to go up. So, and I'm not saying, not advocating we cut, all that down. I'm just saying you can limit cost. You could do that. A company could go in and say, we're going to hire staff doctors. Imagine an ISD with several thousand employees. They could hire doctors on staff. Then they contract with a hospital to take care of those types of things, and they would cut their costs down to very, very low. But the superintendent and the board would be run out of town, right? Because they want to have and maintain. So we want everything, but we don't want to pay for it. So somehow we've got to bridge that gap and bring that cost down. I think President Trump did a good thing in lowering some pharmaceutical cost and opening that up. We saw some of those costs come down. We've got to fix as a country FDA and getting drugs approved and the cost that it takes and the years that it takes to get things approved. That's driving pharmaceutical costs up, the R&D side. So again, there's a lot to work on. Bureaucracy always drives cost up.
Very true. And the last topic or policy issue, Houston has now become the crime capital of the country, surpassing places I never thought we would, LA, New York, Chicago, with more murders. Everyone's pointing the finger. We've heard of so many different reasons. What are your thoughts on that? And even Police Chief Finner has publicly stated within the last 2 days, he's very concerned with the bond program. He and former police chief, the guy in Miami, Acevedo, said that the bond policies that we have in place are not working. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're correct. I don't see how you give somebody who is accused of committing murder a personal recognizance bond. You're just going to let them out on their own accord. That makes zero sense to me. Certainly there can be circumstances that people can look at as far as an individual case, but it makes no sense to me that a violent criminal be allowed out on those types of things. I'm also saying that they not necessarily have to have a multi-million-dollar bond either, but something commensurate with the crime that they've committed. or alleged to commit. But you go back to pointing fingers. That's part of the problem. Nobody wants to step up and say, I'm going to fix this, and here's how I'm going to fix it. You don't see and hear that. You see the county officials running away from it. You see the city officials kind of running away from it because they're not in charge of judges and those types of things. And so at some point, somebody's got to step up and be the leader and say, this is what we're going to do to fix this. Violent crime should not be tolerated in any shape, form, or fashion in our communities. It's certainly not tolerated in Pearland. Do we have some violent crime? It happens. And generally speaking, our police officers are kind and courteous and professional. And you commit a violent crime in my community, they might not be so kind and courteous. And I'm okay with that. I want them to catch you, and I want them to put you in jail, and I want you to, not be on the streets in my community. So as you move away from Harris County and you get into the other counties, you certainly don't see that bond program working that way. So there's a difference in philosophy in the judges. There's a difference in philosophy with the DAs. And so this experiment of trying to do this in our courts has failed miserably. My heart breaks because how many of these crimes could have been prevented had somebody still been in jail? Now, switch gears for a second. I asked a lawyer this one day, and I said, when is the class action suit going to happen against a judge that continues to let people out on a PR? Some surprising attorney ought to go and group all these victims together and say, we're coming after you personally. What would happen if that happened? I don't know.
Things would change.
It would get someone's attention.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely. No, we've lost 158 lives within the last year and a half by letting out criminals on bond, and they committed another serious crime on top of what they were arrested for. So, and that number unfortunately is growing. Now, did you notice that every response the mayor gave was strictly about policy? There was no partisan issues or no partisan statements made, but addressing the statements. And that leads to my next question. I've often said that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, especially at the local level. You just need to fill their potholes. You need to make sure their water turns on. It really doesn't matter. You are in a nonpartisan role. Believe it or not, the city of Houston is supposed to be nonpartisan, even though we do know where all the officials lay, either to the left or to the right. How is it for you? And I like, the reason is, well, I know your management style. We're very similar in that regard, but how are you so successful when others are not, in making sure that all citizens are being heard and addressed, keeping your role nonpartisan, which you've done an excellent job of doing? Why are you so successful and you don't see that happening in other areas?
I think it goes back to the priorities that we talked about. The priority is not me. I'm not, even though I'm the mayor and I'm supposed to be the ceremonial head of our city. It's really about addressing our community and addressing the needs within our community. And Jackie, you lay it out there very well. A street, water, sewer, drainage, a stop sign, a stoplight, those types of things. They don't care if you're right or left. They don't care if you're red or blue. You don't drive on one street if you're Republican and another street if you're a Democrat. The stop sign, albeit it's red for everyone, means stop for everyone. And so part of it is telling people that and saying that. And then secondly, I'm the mayor for everyone in our community. I got almost 57% of the vote. So that means 43% of the people didn't vote for me. So I don't stop
They
and
will
say,
next time.
well, next time is next year. And so I don't stop and say, did you vote for me or not? Because it doesn't matter.
That would be funny though.
It would. It would. I do have a story about a mayor up in East Texas that kind of does some stuff like that. But it's I'm the mayor of everyone in our community, and it doesn't matter if you voted for me or not. If you've got an issue, it's my job to help handle it and get resolved to it. So I think, and so when you come into the meetings and everything else, we should be setting politics aside in a council meeting. It creeps in, but we have to be strong enough to gavel it down or remove it or have that conversation with a council member who wants to start making a partisan play in the middle of a council meeting. So a council meeting itself is a business meeting. Anybody here that's been on a board, a nonprofit board or anything like that, when you come together and you're in a board meeting, it's time to just get ready for business. And it's time to handle the business of the board or handle the business of the nonprofit. The city's no different. We need to be handling the business of the city, and it's a business meeting, so we need to treat it as such. So I try to keep very consistent in how I run meetings. I like to say I know Robert's rules very well. I'm very lax with Robert rules to some extent because I think people should be an adult and just be able to follow through a meeting with no problem. Every once in a while, I've got to pull the gavel out and gavel somebody down. It's very rare, but it does happen. And so Robert's rules are there to maintain order and those types of things. But I just take it seriously that it doesn't matter if you were for me or against me in my election. I'm your mayor and I'm going to do everything I can. Even to the point back during the election, I remember having called no secret, I'm a Republican. If you go and look, I vote in all Republican primaries and those that question does come up in a nonpartisan race. Are you a Republican or Democrat?
I have a story on that, on
Yeah.
you.
And so I tell people, I say, well, it's a nonpartisan election, but I'm not going to run away from my record. If you go and look, you can see that I voted in every Republican primary in the last years. So I'm not going to run away from it. I'm not going to hide from it. And I'm not going to lie about it. I'm just going to tell you what it is. But you turn around and it's like, I'm going to do the best job I can as just me in these issues. But I reached out to a lady. She's known in Democrat circles. She's African-American. And I said, you want to have coffee one day? So we had coffee. We're sitting at Starbucks. She comes up and she goes, now, why is Kevin Cole wanting to meet with me? Because I'm known in town as a Republican. I looked at her and I said, I want to be your mayor and I want to represent you. And in order to do that, I need to know exactly what you think, feel, what's important to you. Open my ears and listen. And that's what I've tried to do.
2 points on that. When you were running, I was called by a certain station. I will not disclose the name. And they wanted me to provide an analysis on his race. They didn't do their homework because they weren't aware that your race was nonpartisan. They pulled up your record and they tried to say, oh, he's a Republican and he's running against a Democrat and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I know enough about Kevin to know that he realizes in his nonpartisan role that he's there to serve everyone. So I'm so glad that you're proving me correct, or else I was going to have a talk with you. Second story, I moderated a forum between Kevin and his Democrat opponent, and the group was mostly Democrat. And I actually talked Kevin, well, I didn't have to talk, look, you don't have to talk him into anything. He is going to do above and beyond. But I actually approached Kevin about this forum. And for full disclosure, I did tell them that Kevin and I were friends, even though they asked me to moderate. Anyway, this group was a Democrat group. They were all in for Kevin. For his opponent before the forum ever began. And I'm seeing all of these emails go by and I was like, and they're like, oh, we're just going to go through the motions. And then they started talking to Kevin. And then they started questioning him on the issues. And then we had the forum. And then they endorsed Kevin. So that just goes to show you that he's not just telling you what you want to hear. He actually backs it up with action. So I've seen that firsthand a lot. I have one more question, well, two, and then I'm going to open it to see if any of you have any questions. Follow up to that one. Locally, you are doing an excellent job, and you're not seeing any kind of partisan rumbling going on in your city. I do know that as mayor, you're a member of TML, they have mayor associations. When you're representing Pearland globally, nationally, do you see the partisan rift, and how do you handle it if you do?
That's a good question. Whether it's TML or HGAC, for example, I'm on the HGAC board, Houston Galveston Area Council. That's where all of the council of governments come together. Any federal money that comes down from DC flows through HGAC as well. So it's 11 county region that they are. So I'm on that board by right because of the size of our city. I serve on the Transportation Policy Council as well, and what else? Water Resources Committee and a few others. And on TML, same way. I see these regional type groups when they come together, the partisanship really doesn't come into play. It will kind of like council, it'll creep up every once in a while, but for the most part, it's about the region, what's important for our region. Now, certainly, as mayor of my city, I'm going to look out for my city. I'm going to look out for projects and try to get dollars into my city for road projects or drainage projects or whatever. But the crux of it is what's good for the region will be good for me, and I think we have to play it that way. We just now recently saw partisanship between not so much Republican Democrat, but Harris County, City of Houston versus everyone else. You got to remember, they are the bigger, parts of the region, but they're not the whole of the region, and they're not the majority of the region. GLO, for example, gave a direct allocation to Harris County for mitigation relief from Harvey, $750 million. And instead of running that dollar through HGAC and the normal channels, that's $750 million almost tore our region apart. Everybody was fighting on how that was going to go. Harris County was not talking to the cities and letting the cities within Harris County know if they were getting anything. On the water resources, we're sitting here going, we're getting a direct allocation of 750. We've got another 488 for the rest of the region. You guys aren't getting any more, so they were all getting hurt over that. So, I mean, it was tearing our region apart. I actually reached out to Mayor Zimmerman and Chuck Wimple and said, why don't we send a message that we're going to ask GLO to claw the whole thing back, put it in with the 488, do the allocation like normal. Harris County would actually get more money. The cities would get direct allocations and those types of things. So we actually voted as a board to go down that road. Fortunately, the 750 made it through HUD approval and everything else about 2 weeks ago. So they're going to go ahead and get it. But it was an example of people weren't looking out for the region. They were looking out for one pot of money, and that was it. And it's an example of how quickly we can devolve into that. And it was ugly. Lots of meetings got really ugly. And there's no need for that in those organizations.
I agree. My last question. If you could look back at the younger Kevin and all of the things that you have learned through your many, many years, and we didn't even touch on the fact, we were talking about the fact that he's mayor of Pearland. He's also heavily involved with many nonprofits in the city and in the region as well. If you were to look back, if you were to give younger Kevin advice as he's just entering into the public servant world, what advice would you give him?
That's a real good question. Don't take yourself so seriously early on, number one. Number two, learn to mellow out a lot sooner in life. If you know my personality. I'm a type A. I'm going to drive as hard as I can. I hate to lose. If you know me, whether it's sports or in politics, I hate it. I hate it. And I hate it. And I'm going to do everything I can to win. And the older I've got, the more I've learned to roll with it, to respond, not react, those types of things. Those are key words to me. I wish I'd have known that in my 30s, but it's never too late to do the right thing and those types of things. So that was something that we learned in our campaign in 2020. We set out to run an absolutely class campaign, first class, all the way. In fact,
And very clean. Who would have
very,
thought?
very clean, very classy. Everything that we did, from the look, feel, content, and everything, was going to be on par with just running a class organization. But then secondly, in campaigns, if you notice, sometimes you can get hit. Somebody can go out on social media or something and they'll attack you. And I think you define yourself on how you respond to that. And so we sat out early on and said, we will not react. There's a difference between being reactionary and responding. And I said, if it's necessary to do anything, we will respond. We'll respond in an appropriate manner, but we're not going to react. And I said, because forward thinking, as mayor, there are going to be things that happen as mayor that are outside of my control, that are going to happen in my city, that I can't be reactionary. I have to be in a responsive mode. So let's practice being mayor all through my campaign. And I wish I'd have learned that in my 30s.
I will add to that the forum that I mentioned earlier. We would ask both candidates a question. Kevin would give a very succinct answer, talk about the policy of the city, and his opponent would attack him. And that happened all night. And it was also online. And so his supporters started telling him, answer the questions, stop attacking. Meanwhile, Mayor Cole did exactly what he just said. Whenever he was attacked by his opponent, he would just keep moving ahead and talk about what the most pressing issues are. So that was a good night.
And
To see you in action like that, that was pretty awesome.
A little secret I learned while I did that, people said, you have a smile on your face the whole night, and this guy is trying to take your head off. And I said, I'm keeping a smile on my face so I don't take his head off. Because the reactionary part is to want to jab back. And I said, this is being live streamed. This is being caught on video forevermore. So, and I knew the audience I was going in front of. This thing will be spliced and diced 10 different ways for a different reaction out on social media. And so knowing that, we knew what could happen with this video. So we just made sure that we kept it on the issues and straight and narrow. And I did my best to just keep a smile on my face. And we videoed everything. So if anybody tried to splice anything, we had copy of it.
Now, at that point, they were already on your team, so. Well, in respect of the mayor's time, I am now going to see if any of you would like to ask him any questions.
here's these two arch rivals who hate each other, who got the best punch in this afternoon in the Senate, or at the judicial nomination hearing. How do you, I hear you talk about, keeping your politics sort of out of the room. A lot of people say that you just simply can't do that. You know that your views are shaped by your political philosophy, your ideology. So I was wondering, could you just talk about the differences of being an official kind of at the local level and what you see as being problematic about the way politics is displayed, at the national level, which is so very different?
Yeah, I've said it outside. The further you go up, so Pearland, and then you have the county, and then Austin, and then DC, and the further you go up, the more toxic it becomes. And that I use that word. It's poisonous, it's toxic. But I'll also say, national media drives a lot of it. The partisanship is the second culprit in all that. Okay. And the third culprit in all of this is, if we just agreed on everything, nobody would raise any money and nobody would have money to spend with the corporate media, right? Okay. So understand the game that's being played.
We were talking at lunch and I said, follow the money trail. A lot of these consultants at the national level, they make money by creating the division. I'm in media and I tell people don't trust the media because there's always a spin behind the story based on who's putting out the story. So that's part of the issues that we have going on as well.
Well, and I tell people, do you really want me to tell you the truth? Because we want our politicians, we want our elected officials to be truthful. And I ask people, you really want me to tell you the truth? Here's what's going to happen here. I'm going to be brutally honest. Here's the truth of this issue, whatever it is. I don't want to hear that. You want me to lie? So we have to tell people the truth, and too many politicians tell people what they think the person wants to hear. Now, I'm not saying that you have to beat somebody over the head with something and hurt them in that way, but you have to be truthful with people. I think we talked about this outside. We get asked for things from our constituents all the time. Sometimes the answer is going to have to be no. I can't do that. I can't help you with that. I had one here just in the last couple of months. They've got a drainage issue with their property, and they want the city to come in and do this. Well, if the city spends money for one recipient, it's actually against the law. Here's the Constitution. Here's what the laws say. Here's everything else. So I'm sitting in front of them, and I said, and staff has talked to them time and time again, and they're not hearing it. So I put it pretty plainly, and I said, do you want me to have legal trouble? Me personally? Well, no. I said, if I move forward and we do that, I could go to jail. Ooh, I don't want that. Okay. How do we walk through this legally? So I had to tell them an answer that they didn't want to hear, but I had to deliver it in a way that they understood. We've got to find a different solution. So as you go on up, it's all about the partisanship. And I said this outside. I think Republicans and Democrats, right and left, probably agree on 70% of things, okay? But we focus on the 30% that we don't agree on. And instead, why don't we focus on the 70% where we agree, build consensus on what we agree, build the camaraderie, build the team, then we can attack the 30% that we disagree on. The other problem is, and this happens on the right or left, happens on both sides, it's all or none. Ronald Reagan back, years and years ago, he would tell people, if I can get 70% of what I'm asking for, I'm going to take it. Now, I'm going to come back the next day and I'm going to ask for the other 30%, but I'm going to do what I can to get 70% of what I'm looking for. We've lost that type of negotiations in DC. It's all or none. And if you'll watch and look at our country, so when I first was elected in the mid-90s, you had about 43% of the country classified as Democrat, 43% of the country classified as Republican. So what does that make the middle? 14% in the middle. What is it today? It's a third, a third, a third. Why? Because the polar opposites have taken over both parties. And so it's driving the parties further and further apart, which is allowing the middle to grow bigger and bigger. You go look, you cannot win an election at the national level, and you can't win an election at the state level without winning the middle. You can't, because you can't win with just Democrats and just Republicans. You've got to have these independents. And it's the independents that have walked away from this extreme. But the extreme is what pays the bills. It's the extreme. Go look at your email. Go look at your mailbox. The day after something happens in Washington, D.C., here comes the fundraising letter off of it. And then you can see and look, as you mentioned, the media. I can name names on both right and left, and they're the media darlings, right and left. Well, why? They're in safe districts. They'll never be primaried. They'll never lose election, and their constituencies know that. So this person gets run out there as the media darling so they can say everything about their side. Same thing over here. They go run out and tell everything about it, and it can be as extreme can be. They're in a safe district. They're not in a district that's even close. Well, look at Dan Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw is in a district that's pretty purple, okay? And he gets crucified by both sides of the aisle. You have people on the far right that just think he's a rhino. You have people on the Democrats that, but what is he doing? He is right down the middle. Which
Sarah
is where
Davis is another example. State Rep Sarah Davis. She always got primaried in the Republican primary, and a Democrat always ran against her. And she straddled that fence for several years until she got beat with when they did in 2018, I believe. So yes, okay. One last question for the mayor.
Now you're asking me to remember. No, it's a really good question. So I was just involved in the community, different groups, church, went to high school, Pearland High School, and was known, through high school groups. So you got to remember back in 1990, for example, first time I ran for office was in 92, but in 1990, the community was about 19,000 people. Okay. It's not 100, it's almost 130 now. So it's a little easier to get your name known with 19,000 people than, so when you've grown up in it and you just know people. So a lot of it's just that, being there, being consistent, being visible, being seen.
I'd like to add also being involved with the various nonprofits.
Right.
I didn't have the opportunity to be born there in my city. And actually the Black population at the time was 4%. And so I was told that was me and my family. But as the mayor was saying, just being present has always helped. And also the various like exchange group, Rotary, just giving service to the community. And if they really see it's genuine and from the heart, being active, that helps a lot.
And I have a question. If we can get it to work where there's actual ridership, that's been our issue. In fact, we're just outside of the metro taxing area and service area. So having Metro do it has been difficult because we don't supply them with tax money to do it. Having said that, the council and the city actually had a park and ride bus service several years. It was before the pandemic hit. They started it, and the ridership just didn't materialize, and so it collapsed, and we no longer have it. Having said that, we do think there's a need for some type of transit need in our community, especially into the med center for people who work there, people who need to go and for treatments and those types of things. We're in the process of doing a transit needs study right now. What does that look like? Could be rail, could be bus, could be, any number of things. And I might not be here when it gets built, but I think we need to be looking beyond, next year, but down the road. In fact, to that end, I was chairman of the Greater 288 Partnership that pushed 288 to be built. And in that process, we pushed the city of Houston to help get the Kirby corridor designated as a transit corridor. And again, I said to Mayor Parker at the time, I may never see it built, but you've got to start with the planning and those types of things long term. On the east end of town, Pearland Parkway, Monroe is a great opportunity to have some type of a service back up to Hobby Airport because it's a direct shot to Hobby. So we need to be planning those types of things. But currently, there just hasn't been enough ridership. We do have some van services, so a little bit smaller. They're a little bit more affordable to have on the road than a big bus. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Mayor, thank you so much for oh, yes, Father. Yes, Father.
Common good. Well, so outside of being mayor, I'll tell you one. 288 was one talking about a common good. Road projects, large transportation deals. Typically, they transcend a city. They go beyond those borders. They go beyond counties, and so truly getting. I view transportation and those types of needs as a quality of life issue. Nobody wants to be just sitting, right? You want to be moving and going. And so getting arms around the necessary people in that partnership to put the right pressure, call it what it is, advocating for that project. And it took a couple of years to make that happen. But more importantly than that, it really took trying to figure out, and I call it the political landmine. There's a lot of people and a lot of elected officials, Jackie, you'll know this, that will tell you one thing and then they'll work against you over here. Okay. And so learning and understanding that and then trying to figure out where the landmine was. We found out where the landmine was, so then we could attack how we're going to deal with that. And as soon as we had that done, the road project started working pretty quick. So it's really just getting your arms around the stakeholders and the right, making sure that that they see you as, I'm trying to fix a problem. I'm not trying to do this for me. I'm trying to do this to better our community, better people's quality of life, those types of things. And then secondly, as mayor, I got elected in November. So we're in the height of COVID. Okay. What's coming next? The vaccine. So my first issue that I really had to deal with was securing vaccine. And we had a phenomenal team set up at the city to put on a point of distribution for vaccines, but we didn't have vaccine. And so it really took, reached out to our county judge and I said, Matt, you know me. Yep, I do. Said, you know, I'm not going to go away. Yep, I know that. And I said, I'm going to be very respectful and very professional with it, but I want my vaccine. And you know, we ended up able to get it. And long story short, we shot over 25,000 doses of vaccine over about an eight-week period. And so that took a team effort. I went and helped secure, but we had an incredible team that ran a point of distribution that was second to none. In fact, the state came in and looked at it and just couldn't believe how well oiled it really went. True story, in November or October of 2019, so before the pandemic hit, they had just done, our staff did, and emergency services had just done a mock up of a vaccine pod for like anthrax or something like that. Had just done a mock exercise on it with the book fresh on the shelf about what to do. So when the pandemic hit, and then we got ready to do the vaccine, pulled the book off the shelf, we knew exactly what to do. And it was like clockwork. It was incredible what they did. And I'd like to share something. I pulled this out. So I get a point of personal privilege. I get letters from time to time from constituents who say, or an email or text message or whatever, and say, look, I had an interaction with one of your staff members that was just incredibly great, you know, great service. They bent over backwards. They went out of their way. They did just extra special things. They want to brag on the employee. And so I like getting those because we get plenty of the bad, get less of the good. So when you do, I wanted to come and I send an email to the supervisor with a attaboy or attagirl type comment and want to make sure that the employee knows that somebody was bragging on them. So I did that through last year. Towards the end of the year, I said, I want to create a challenge coin. We've seen these in especially in military and police work. You see challenge coins. And so I said, I want to have a challenge coin made. And when somebody gets that bragging done, I want to be able to not just give an email. I want to be able to give them a marker. I told you, I'm a marker person. And I want to give a marker to people so they will remember the incident, something to remember by. And so they put it all together, staff did. This is kind of an old retro look of the city logo from years ago. And then on the other side, it's the why in action. It's the why we do what we do as a city. It's why our employees go to work every day. And it's around our core principles, integrity, trust, respect, ownership, teamwork, and innovation. And so we challenge our employees to live and breathe that every single day. And so it's been really fun to go into a meeting or an office or something, and all of a sudden people go, okay, why is the mayor here? What's going on? You know, and I get to read them what I get from the people on the street, and then something that they can remember by. And it's interesting to see this and hear the stories of their supervisors later. These people, they're like, they have a smile on their face for, you know, days and days and days, just because we were, and I said, if somebody took the time to notice, I need to take the time to notice as well. And it's all about employee morale and patting people on the back when they do something good. And what's interesting, in every single one of the cases I've told them this, you're only doing your job. You didn't set out to do anything special that day. You're just doing your job. But somebody noticed, and if they notice, I need to notice. And I think that's important.
Building on that, the last point. This is small university. Our students at the international level are very idealistic. They come here because they want to integrate faith and culture. And what would you say to them about being a public servant, a politician, using the word politician And he also points out there how many people think it's a dirty kind of profession, and so forth and so on. What would you say to them, especially in a culture which has such a negative approach to political institutions?
Well, first and foremost, if God calls you to go into an arena, you should probably listen. And first and foremost, if it's a calling on your life, because if you don't, that may not work out as well either. So if God's calling you to go do something, you should do it. You should do it with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. You should live your faith, not hide it. And I think what we see going on in the political arena, what we see going on in DC and other places, could probably use a little Christianity, could probably use a little scripture, could probably use a little faith. And so go and do and live by it. We're going to make mistakes as humans. We do that each and every day. But go and live who you are. And good things should come of it if you're going into it with the right heart and mind. The problem is so much corruption enters in. I'd also say this. It's easy for me to be in politics and I live at home. If you're flying back and forth and you're not around your family, you're not around your people, right? So build in accountability to those people to go and do, build in self-accountability. I have 4 gentlemen that I have in a text group. At any moment, I can text them and say, I need your help. I need your prayer. I need your support. Gosh, I just need to talk to one of you so I can just scream my head off because I'm that aggravated or I'm that frustrated, right? They're my accountability partners. They're my accountability group. I think every politician in local, state, federal needs to have an accountability group to hold them accountable to who they are, to what they say, and to what they do. Accountability in love, not bash over the head, but you pull a brother aside and say, hey, this is what I saw you doing. This is what you say. Hold people accountable. And we have to be man and woman enough to take that the right way. And if we live our faith, we will turn from those types of ways. We'll correct our action and we'll be better people for it. And our country will be a better nation for it because you'll have the real faith being lived out in the political arena. And it's easier said than done, but you got to have those accountability partners to pull it off.
Another thing that Kevin does is oftentimes he will pull me aside and ask me, how am I doing? What are your thoughts? And you don't have many elected officials who actually want to hear, especially approach me, because I will tell you what I think. And he will do it often because he wants to know what his constituents are thinking, how he can continue to improve upon himself. And that's something that I'm very proud of you for. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Father, thank you for having us as well. Everyone with St. Thomas, it's been a pleasure. Again, this is Pearland Mayor Kevin Cole. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you to all. Great evening.
And I'm Jacquie Baly. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Haven't we been blessed tonight to be introduced to a man who is in politics and shows us how to practice virtue, both personal and civic. By the way, that's the title of one of the courses in our Masters of Faith and Culture program, Virtue, both personal and civic. And we have another course called The Art and Asceticism of Dialogue. And I must say, you embody those, what we talk about in those 2 courses. And I want to thank you for being here this evening. Father Bin, the real director of the center, could not be here tonight, and he apologizes for that. But I'm sure that he will be watching this and he will just be thrilled that the both of you have come here with such a good spirit and embody what the Pope has to say to us. And there's just one other quotation that I want to cite from the Pope's work over here, because I think it gathers here, if I can find it quickly. He talks about the social friendship. And you hit upon that many, many times in your remarks tonight, that what we really want to do here is to understand that politics is a wonderful career. And people should look at going into it who can maintain this social friendship and also keep their eye fixed, as you said so many times in your remarks tonight, on what the goal is to provide the common good. You stick with the issue. You know all the minefields that are around there, but you learn how to manage them and see that the people benefit. So I would like to dedicate our final prayer here tonight to the people of the Ukraine who are suffering, and also to pray for the Russian people, that they too will be exposed to the truth of social friendship, the need for worldwide politics that really respects boundaries, the freedom of people, the equality of people, and the right to pursue happiness. So we gather up ourselves in prayer. O good and gracious God, we are thankful for the service that Mayor Cole renders to the people of Pearland. We thank Jackie and him for a wonderful conversation tonight on things which inspire us to look at how we can better practice social friendship. That we too can be good Samaritans along the road and always have our eyes fixed on those who are wounded, who are abandoned, who are marginalized, and have no voice. Help us, therefore, to have new hearts created in that love which you show us. And that love will inspire us to recognize in ourselves and to manifest to others what it means to be children of God. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.